So I want to welcome everybody tonight to our February SALT Talks. It's hard to believe we're in February. It's like this time frame's gone too fast. But last month we discussed and talked about independent living and, how do you prepare for that? And so we started the year off in transition, working through your high school to transition and then into what happens after high school. And as we moved, then we went into independent living, preparing for that, the life skills and all, all the issues and situations and the different topics that you have to face while going for independent living. But now this month, we are starting with learning about employment. Now, for transitioning into employment, as I was telling Mark and Michelle knows that that was a challenging time in the sense as a parent. We didn't know, for one thing, if our child could, if he could work. We questioned that. And then be preparing for that transition into employment. But with the county board and the help of several groups, we made that transition, and he loves to work. He loves to work. And so all my doubts are gone on that. But that period of time, just getting through that and making that transition from a school to employment is a challenging process for me as a parent, and maybe for some of you. So tonight I have two speakers. We have Mark Miller. He's going to be talking about navigating employment. And then we have Michelle Garrett on to speak. She works with the Montgomery County Board of Developmental Disabilities in the employment navigation. She's a supervisor there. I've known both of these individuals for a long time, all surrounding employment. So, and just with the whole transition process. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to, I guess, Mark, are you going to be speaking first? And do you want me to go ahead and pull up the presentation a while? You're on mute.
There we go.
Okay, there you go. Okay, you can start talking. I'll pull it up a while.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to come in and just chat with you a little bit about employment planning. Much of what we're going to be talking about today is going to be about how do we plan for this employment. I know in school, we have transition planning in schools, and we know that the IEP has a lot of transition loaded in there. I would only hope that that whatever district that your son or daughter might be in, that they are doing as much as possible to help give them exposure, experience, education around the world of work. So what we found over the years is that the more that the school districts are doing around transition to work, the more likely it is that the people who are getting that type of exposure and experience are going to either graduate with a job or get a job soon after. And so today I want to talk to you about some of the different services that are out there for both while in school and then going into adulthood. So I'm going to give you kind of an overview of all the different things that are like the toolbox, for example, and to give you some understanding of what that is and how it might help your son or daughter when it comes to planning for community employment. So we can go to the next slide. And so the big question, first things first, why work? Well, so work is kind of one of those things we all do, whether we like it or not. And it's part of just being kind of part of being in our world. And so there's a lot of things about work. And if you notice, the thing in the middle of this slide says earning your own money. And certainly we work to earn money. And but there's other things too. And there's other things that come along with getting a job and being part of a community job. And some of them are just a sense of belonging, being able to grow and have more independence. And so to be able to have a sense of more control of your life. being able to meet new people, being able to make a positive contribution, sense of identity and pride, and discover and learn new skills. In community jobs, you may go in and you'll be doing one particular set of tasks, but inevitably you're going to learn more and you're going to learn more. You're going to be able to see other people doing things. So the potential for growth internally, to learn new things, to learn how to get along with people. A job is a bit of a continuation of school when you think about it, because there's so many new things to learn, communication skills, meeting new people, all of those things enter into when we're talking about why would we work. And of course, there's always the big payoff of when you get that paycheck. So that certainly has its own set of things, as far as earning more money, and people find a lot of things to do with discretionary income. So we'll go on to the next slide then. And so discover and learn new skills. So one of the things way, way back when, people had an idea, people wondered, and I'm talking back in the 60s and the 50s, people with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, there was a question about can they learn tasks that would be marketable and in the labor market. And of course, we know that to be true, that they can. And as long as people have the opportunities with the right support, they can learn new skills, and they can be skills that employers will value. And so parents and caregivers are often very surprised when their sons or daughters get a job and they see the different things that they come home and talk about, and they're learning. They're like, "You're doing that?" So, well, wait a minute. You don't clean your room, but you're able to do this, and this. And so, I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with parents over the years that they are very surprised with the level that their sons or daughters have been able to achieve, and the new things they can do, and that making that progress, that personal growth. So we'll go on to the next slide. And a sense of belonging. I think all of us have experienced, whenever we're on a job, to be part of a group of people, be part of a team. And so there's a lot to be said for that, to being part of that team, and to be able to be accepted for whatever contributions you have to offer. And so, when we talk about a job in the community, it's not just about making that paycheck, but all of these things that come into play to helping, your son or daughter grow, as they're moving into adulthood. So we'll go to the next slide. And that sense of identity and pride. So think about it. Whenever you're out and about, whenever we're all out and about, usually what's the first thing that people ask? Well, where do you work? And so tell me about your job. And so, when your son or daughter gets a job in the community, and I say when, not if, I'm hoping that will be the case, they'll be able to say, well, let me tell you where I work, and let me tell you about my job. And so, it's just one of the things that is like an opener. It's like a conversation starter. Where do you work? Tell me about your job. And so just being able to have that sense of identity of here's where I work. Let me tell you about my job. It really just opens the door for a lot of social opportunities for whenever they're out and about, whenever they're meeting new people, whenever they're talking to family, whenever they're talking to friends. Let me tell you about my job. Let me tell you where I work. And then we see in this slide, it's obviously a Kroger employee, and Stephen with his name badge. I cannot tell you how many people that I've seen over the years, wherever they're working, when there's a name badge, and there's just a sense of pride with having the name badge sometimes, because it's like, this is my place. These are my peeps. These are the people I work with, and here's what I do. So there's a whole lot to be said for the sense of identity and the pride that goes along with having a job. Next slide. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Employment First. If you haven't heard about Employment First, It is basically it is a philosophy that operates on the belief that everybody, and this is employment first all over the country, but in Ohio, the belief that every Ohioan, including those with very substantial disabilities, should have the chance to work within their community. And so, we cherish the diversity and the aim to enhance our workforce and community by embracing and value everyone. So employment first was signed into the administrative rule in 2012 by Governor Kasich, and that is basically the biggest tenet of employment first is that the assumption and the presumption, I should say, that everybody can work at some level with the right supports. And so there's just so many times that, parents of young adults, students, or even older parents, when they've gone into, when they've kind of transitioned into adult life, are not sure that their son or daughter can work, and that they may not understand that there are so many supports out there. There's so many things out there to help them make that work. And employment first really has been a driver of that over the years. That presumption the presumption of employability. So that's kind of the vision that we all who are doing this type of work have operated under, and we continue to do that. And so we're going to talk a little bit more in the next slides about some of the different things in the toolkit that are going to help that happen. So we'll go to the next slide. So path to employment is very unique to Department of Developmental Disabilities and people who have already transitioned from school into adult life, and maybe they become eligible for the Department of DD services. And that might be with your county board of developmental disabilities. It could be whatever county you live in Ohio. Every county has a board of developmental disabilities that will be able to offer these types of services that we're going to be talking about. Path to employment basically says 4 different areas, and this is once they become eligible for services, that either they already have a job, but they want a job, but they just need help getting one. They may fit under the category of I'm not sure if I want to work and I need more support to identify career options and opportunities, or I'm really not, really don't want to work right now, but I may need more information to help make that decision. And really, what this is, this kind of outlines the informed choice and being able to understand, the different opportunities that might be available. And I think having a clear understanding of what your supports are and what's available to help your son or daughter transition into a competitive integrated work setting is just very important. So we're going to talk about some of those in the slides coming forward, and then we're also going to be talking about providers who can help do that. So we'll move to the next slide. And I am going to hand this over to Michelle, and she's going to talk about who can be on your employment team to make all of these things happen to help you move into community employment.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Garrett, and I work with the Montgomery County Board of DD. And we just want to talk a little bit about who can be on your team. Your child's team. Your team can be as big as you want or as small as you want. So one thing we do know is your best advocate is yourself. Or your child. And so, of course, we want them on the team to be able to express their wants, desires, needs for employment. Other people on the team could be their staff. They might have an HPC provider who takes them out into the community. They may know things that they like to do in the community that could help in finding employment. Their payee, that is a huge one. A payee is huge in helping to report income to Social Security, making sure the bills are paid. So we would definitely want the payee involved in the team. If your child is still in school, educators, teachers, transition staff, Even if they've already graduated, they may want to invite a teacher or a transition staff who'd help them during their high school years to be on their team, to put their input in for employment. We would definitely have the vocational rehabilitation counselor from OOD as part of the team. Once that referral has been made from the county board to OOD, the OOD counselor will be the one who kind of heads the team, drives the ship, if you want to say, to finding employment. You also want from Developmental Disabilities Board, you would want your SSA, your Service and Support Administrator, your Employment Navigator, SSA. You might want your Transition Service and Support Administrator to be part of your team. Family, that's an important part also. Mom, dad, siblings, grandparents, aunts and uncles, anyone who can advocate for your child or who knows your child best. They might want to have a friend. They might have a peer mentor at school or just a mentor, some of their friends they might want to have join their team. And then anyone else who knows or cares for the child, for the student. Next slide, please. Okay, so who and what is a provider? So we have some examples of agency providers and an overview of what they do. So a lot of the providers that we work with in the employment field would be ViaQuest, URS, Goodwill. There are quite a few other providers out there. I was just giving you an example of a few. All three of these providers also provide adult day supports, vocational habilitation. They provide homemaker personal care, career planning, and individual employment supports. So the career planning options would be job development, job coaching, career discovery, community-based assessments, whatever we need to do to help the student find employment. The individual employment supports would come in after they've obtained a job and have been successful. We would have follow-along services that could last for a very long time or just a few years, depending on what the team agrees to. But the individual employment supports would be checking on the student once or twice a month just to make sure that everything's going okay at the job, and talking to the employer. That's a huge thing, to get the employer feedback, just to make sure that the student is doing their job and performing well, and we don't need to do any other job coaching. Also, transportation. Non-medical transportation can either be provided by an agency or an independent provider. So some examples of individual providers and an overview of what they do. There are many independent providers. The list was very long when I looked it up, but a lot of things that they do are homemaker personal care, money management, transportation, and individual employment supports. Next slide. How do I get a provider and what's the process? So we kind of wanted to break it down on what agency does what, because that can be very confusing at times. So when you're involved with Montgomery County Board of Developmental Disability Services, you would have a service and support administrator, or if your child is younger than 22, they would work with the transition SSA. If you're interested in working with OOD and finding employment, they would make a referral to me, and I would assign an employment navigator. And then we would help you make the referral to OOD and any agency providers and private providers. Once you become involved with OOD, they're going to refer you to an employment provider to help with job coaching and job development. And then who at these agencies can help? Your SSA, your ENSSA, your OOD counselor. And what do I need to do to get that help? You just need to tell your SSA you'd like to look for employment, and then ask your ENSSA to make a referral to OOD and just attend all the meetings. And the ENSSA is there to help walk and navigate through the whole OOD process. Next slide, please. One thing that OD offers is PREETS, which is pre-employment transition services. And there are 4 areas that it focuses on. So the one area is job exploration counseling. And this focuses on completing interest surveys, interest inventories, registering on Ohio Means Jobs, looking at different careers that the person may be interested in. Another service is counseling on post-secondary opportunities, and this focuses on school after high school. So it could be looking at colleges or maybe Parton Talks. I'm sorry. Or maybe a trade school that the student might be interested in attending before applying for jobs. And then we have instruction and self-advocacy. And this focuses on learning skills to advocate for oneself, having a greater independence, learning rights and responsibilities, and also learning how to request accommodations. And then we have work-based learning, and that focuses on appropriate worksite behaviors, taking tours of a work site, doing a job shadow to see how different positions operate at a job, and doing an informational interview. And employers are very welcoming to have people come in and see what they do and ask questions about different jobs that are available at their companies. And then they also have a summer youth program, and that's to focus on job exploration counseling. This is a group-based service, and students can work during this time and receive a paycheck. So it really focuses on work skills, what types of careers are out there. So if you're interested in that, you would need to talk to your OD counselor. And for PREETS, the school can refer students to OD for this program or these services, or the EN can also help refer students for PREETS services. Next slide, please.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. So as you can see, there's a lot of information out there. I think maybe this might be a time to just take a quick pause to see if there's any questions about, because we've really just kind of given you a lot of information. But I think just to summarize, there's things that schools can be doing right now, and we would really ask you to for community employment, to really talk to your special education teacher, their transition coordinator, and really emphasize, the need to maybe engage in some of these, as Michelle was talking about, PREETS or the pre-employment training. That's something that your son or daughter can do while they're in school. And that would be, so we're really talking about two agencies here. One of them is Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. So please remember that one. And we call that, when we talk about our alphabet soup, that's OOD. So Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And you want to talk. And so when you're having that conversation with the teacher, the transition coordinator, talk to them about PREETS or pre-employment training services. One part of that is more classroom related, kind of the first part of it. And then the other part they have is actually getting out and doing work experience. Both of those very valuable things that can happen while your son or daughter is in school. So when we talk about takeaways today, remember PREETS while they're in school. The other things we're going to be talking about are things that when they leave school, they want to, the services that we're going to be talking about for employment planning, the things that Michelle was talking about as far as talking with an SSA or service and support administrator. That's kind of a case manager. Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the form of a case manager in school. So if you have a case manager already in school, the adult version of that is called an SSA, or a service and support administrator. And they'll be able to help you do all of those things that Michelle was talking about as far as getting connected to OOD, getting connected to the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. So just kind of, those are some of your takeaways today. I'm going to talk a little bit about something really important that also kind of a takeaway. Did I see a question in there? Was there a question come up? Thought I saw something. Okay, guess not. So there's a video here I'd like you to see, just to kind of show you an example of somebody who has, a parent and her perspective for her son. And so we're going to share Stephen's story with you.
Is this Stephen's story?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to, hold on a second. I'm going to back out to get, whoops, 1 second. I'm going to stop share and switch over to their story. Okay. Second.
So let me just, before you click play on that, let me just set this up a second. Whenever you think, or if you think that your son or daughter may not be able to work in the community, I think you'll get a little inspiration from Stephen's story. So
I'm Gail Webster, and this is my son.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
In. Are you ready? Or do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, can you back up to Gail there? There we go.
All right.
And this is my son Stephen, my husband Kevin.
Can you hear it?
With Stephen's wood
It
shop.
might need to up the volume.
Bat houses, bee houses, bird feeders. We're here as a vendor, and we are selling his products. We always wanted Stephen to have a job in the community where he was doing something that he loved. His diagnosis is that part of his brain is missing. A large chunk of his brain is missing. And because there's a void there, the ventricle expands and touches on the nerve endings, and that causes seizures. And the lack of brain also is why there's mental retardation and why there's verbal apraxia. It's not a particular condition. It's, we didn't know about it till he was 4 months old when he had his first seizures. It was just a big surprise to us that he wasn't, the perfect, normal, healthy baby that we thought we started with those first 4 months. So he came to Cincinnati Children's when he was 1 to see the neurologist so that the seizures could be managed, but also that he started with occupational, physical, and speech therapies there, and has been going there ever since. He's 28 now. When Stephen was a baby, he loved to hammer toys. So then when he outgrew those little hammer toys, my husband came up with the idea of bringing in a big log and buying Stephen a box of nails and just let him hammer until the whole log was full of nails. We'd burn the log and recycle the nails, and the process would continue.
I know you just wanted a couple of adjectives, but it's just hard. It's hard for me to just limit it to just a couple of words because Stephen's much more than that, He's just very involved, with people who want to be involved with him. He will do anything for you. And I need all the help I can get. He's 28, so it must have been about 14 years ago. He was a freshman in my class, and the wood shop was next door to our classroom, and we started working on projects. There was an acronym that I always tried to teach by, and it's called PINS. It was preferences, interests, needs, and strengths. So when you look at Stephen, the things he's doing meets all those criteria. And seeing what his parents and all the people previous to me have done, they're doing that, and that's why he's so successful.
What he really loves is operating his digger. He has a backhoe at home and a big pile of dirt. It's the only thing in his life he has ever asked for. His siblings got to go to college. Stephen got a digger. And like with the hammering, you never knew where that was gonna end up, that it actually become a business. With his digger, who knows where that might also lead him. Green, one of our blessings is that he's maybe not high enough functioning to understand that he's different, or maybe it's just that he's never been taught to believe that he's a whole lot different.
Sure.
Truck, yeah, there's a truck, I know it. Because Stephen is basically nonverbal, he can only really make the first consonant sounds of words. Yellow? So most people can't understand him unless they really know him well and they know the context in which those sounds are being made. Or our truck is yellow. Our truck is yellow, right? So we've come up with a photo book, which works really, really well for Stephen. We take pictures of just about everything that he does, and then on the computer we print them out on a page, and I put words with it so people looking at a glance can see who was in the picture, who he might be talking about, and where he was and what he was doing and when it was. Things are going well for us, and things can go well for other families too. There's a lot more opportunities for people with any kind of disability. And so I want parents to know your kid doesn't have to be pigeonholed. I want them to know there's exciting things that can happen. Your child can live a really rich and fulfilling life, and they can be really happy.
And so if parents can just understand by the time their son or daughter graduates, they should know what their preferences are, what their interests are, what their needs are, what their strengths are, and encourage all the professionals involved with their kids to focus on those things. I think their story can be just as successful, if not more so, than Stephen's.
Don't be afraid. Don't say, oh, my child could never. Don't hold them back from doing whatever it takes to help them fulfill their potential.
Thank you. I really love that story. I think, when we talk about dreams and visions
Whoops.
for, can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. I don't know why it just went right into another video.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
So when when you think about, I think that Stephen's story is just one of many of having a vision, having a path to something that is very meaningful, for your son or daughter. And I think what when they talked about PINs, preference, interest, needs, and strengths, that is just such an important part of what, gathering that information, knowing what the interests are, what the needs are, the strengths, the preferences, and really having a buffet of all of the things that you can accumulate that are there that would fit under that category, the PINs category, will really help moving forward, especially into adult life and looking for a job, especially. Stephen's story, while it may be unique because he has his own business, that's just one way. PINs can be used for any number of ways of getting into community employment. So just remember preference, interest, needs, and strengths. And whoever is working with your son or daughter in whatever capacity, even if it's in school or if it's in adult providers that we've talked about, and we're going to talk here a little bit more about, make sure they understand that that's something that's very important for not only you, but for them to understand so that they can help make some of that vision, some of those dreams actually come to fruition. So we're going to talk a little bit more about PINs, but we're going to kind of drill down a little bit into another type of tool that I really want you to be aware of as well. So we'll go to the next slide. So career exploration. Some of the different services I'm going to talk about, these are services that can occur with OOD, opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, and with the Board of Developmental Disability Services. I think I saw something in the chat, Patty, what the difference between the two. So the difference between, okay, here's the question. The difference between BVR and OOD. So that's the same agency. So OOD is the umbrella agency, the state agency that has BVR in there. So anytime you hear OOD and BVR together, that it's the same agency. So hopefully that answers your question there. But I wanted to make sure I answered that because we're going to be talking about those two differences. Career exploration can occur with OOD or /BVR and the County Board of DD Services. So it's a service that's used to help somebody explore different outcomes. So it could be doing informational interviews. So it might be somebody taking your son or daughter to an employer, and they might do a job shadow, or they might talk to the employer about what are the different jobs that you have here. What are some of the tasks that you require for people when you hire? Do you need a degree, or do you need any specialized training? They may also be able to job shadow and just watch other people doing the job. So career exploration is that service that allows your son or daughter to make informed choices about, well, I don't know. I went to ABC company and I watched them do this job. I really didn't care for that, because it was really hot in there, or I didn't like the different things going on. It was too loud. So it really gives them an opportunity to go in and look at the different environments, to look at the different job duties, to ask the questions like, what do you require here? And so it really just builds up that library of information for your son or daughter to be able to make a choice about either moving forward with that particular career move, or that job move, or not. Or maybe let's go look at something else. So career exploration really is, it's a great service. It's kind of one of the things you would want to do before you kind of move into other services, or before you would start looking for a job. So it just helps you help identify a more appropriate job. We'll go to the next slide. Community-based work experience. Now, this is something that OOD does, and this is something that the boards of developmental disabilities have a version of this. So let me just talk about this one. This is one that OOD does that's used to assess a person on the job. So they're actually going to go out, they'll develop a job at an employer site that based off of some of the information, like what do you like to do? What are you good at? Your pins. So they'll use those pins, those preference, interests, needs, and strengths to be able to say, okay, well, if taking all of those things into account, let's go out and develop a work experience for your son or daughter to see how they do. And they'll assess like their aptitude on the job, the abilities, different behaviors, any accommodation needs, preferences, to see if that would be a good fit before going out and actually developing that job. So, and that gives them a chance to actually get hands-on experience with a job coach with them. So they'll always have somebody with them when they're doing these things. So it's not like they're gonna get thrown out there and good luck. They're gonna have somebody who's gonna be with them, guiding the process, communicating back to you, communicating back to their team, their counselors, their teachers, their case managers, whoever might be on that employment team. Michelle was talking about that employment team. But that is a fantastic tool, a community-based work experience, because you get firsthand knowledge about how your son or daughter is going to be able to do in a certain environment, a certain job tasks, and just the different types of expectations that are there. I wanted just to tell a really quick story about somebody. I remember a parent who was really advocating for her son to work full time, and is actually working in a nursing home in the dietary department. And my job coaches at the time, this is many years ago, my job coaches at the time were coming back saying, he's just not quite getting it. He's not really, we're not really able to get him to that point to where, he's going to work out in this job. And he really liked it. His mother was very happy with it, really liked the environment. And I will never forget this. We learned so many things from parents. Parents are really some of our best teachers, people who are in this field. Because I remember her saying that if you only put the bar right here, you put this is where your job coaches is basically what she was saying at this meeting. If you only put those expectations here, he'll meet that expectation. But if you fail to keep pulling the bar up a little bit, he's gonna be right where you're at it. But he will eventually meet it with the right supports. And I'll never forget that, because it was kind of like, you're right. And guess what? We did. We continued working with this young man we kept just inching up the expectations slowly at his pace. And he was able to meet that expectation. He was able to exceed that expectation. He ended up getting on full time. He did a fantastic job. They loved him there. But it really taught us as practitioners, as job coaches and managers, that some people just take a little bit more time. And if you don't keep bringing the bar up a little bit, people are going to meet you where you set that expectation. So, long story short, we want to keep raising the bar as much as we can and as appropriate, and at the person's pace. So, community-based work experiences are a good way to gauge where to start setting that bar. And so that's why I wanted to kind of throw that story in there, because coming from that parent, it really taught us that, we really need to take the time to set those expectations and move and help train that person to be able to do that work. So we'll go on to the next slide. Job development. Okay, this is actually under when you say DD, that's developmental disabilities waiver. We won't go into what a waiver is right now, but basically it's a way to get these services when you're eligible for them with the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. But it's an individualized service to basically help get into competitive integrated employment. Let me just talk about competitive integrated employment and the difference between that and other types of employment. I don't know if you're familiar with the term sheltered employment or sheltered workshop, but basically that is kind of it's usually a facility-based program where people may go to be able to do work in what they call vocational habilitation. But it's in a congregate setting. It's kind of an institutional setting where people go and they do contract work. They do different skills types of things. And the end goal of that usually is that they will learn skills to get into competitive employment. What we found, though, is that isn't always the case. That when people sometimes they go into these types of settings, these sheltered employment settings, that's kind of where they end up staying and moving on. Happens occasionally, but for the most part, the longer a person stays in that type of employment situation, it's very difficult to come back out of that just because you get used to it. That becomes your comfort zone, et cetera. But competitive integrated employment is working for minimum wage or higher in a work setting where people without disabilities are working. So pretty much everywhere else would be a competitive integrated employment. So job development is where you take this information that you've learned about the person, their preferences, their interests, their needs, their strengths, their transportation, all the things that have to do with making a good job match, going where the job makes sense, goes into play, and then actually going out and developing that job, making contacts with employers, doing interviews, all those types of things are under this service or under this tool we call job development. So that's a term you'll want to become familiar with. It could happen while they're in school. It could happen when they've transitioned from school to adult life. So it can happen in either phase of life. So just kind of that's a term you want to remember is job development. That's actually going out looking for the job. Okay, next slide, please. So once your son or daughter gets that wonderful job, that's a good job match, you have a job coach typically would go out with your son or daughter, and they would help them learn the new job. And basically that job coach would work with that employer to make sure that they're able to learn the job, learn clocking in, what the uniform is, all of the social protocols, making sure they know when their break time is, their transportation, everything that you can possibly imagine that occurs on that job site. A job coach is there to make sure that works out for them and to make sure that they're safe and that the supervisors and everybody is on board, coworkers, introductions. That's really the role of the job coach. And sometimes job coach will just be like an employment consultant, and the person may or may not need them to be there for that much. And in that case, they would be there just to consult with the employer, just to make sure that if there's any other training that needs to occur, they're going to be there for them. But the job coach is there with them until they are comfortable with the job, until they're doing what needs to be done from the employer standpoint. And then they will fade out slowly, fade out slowly as the employer takes over, with what they typically would do. That job coach would fade out. The job coach then can go back and at whatever frequency may be needed to check on the person. So there's always going to be somebody who's going to be available to check in. I mean, if this is, if they're eligible for, I should say, for the DD services. So the county boards of DD do support what they call job retention, and usually a job coach or somebody in that capacity would be somebody who would be doing that support. So is there any questions about any of these so far? I know I'm giving you a lot of information. We're talking about a job coach. We're talking about job development. We've talked about community-based work assessments. So, we want to figure out what the job looks like, what the person's interests are, what they're good at, make sure that it's a good job match. They go into job development. I'm kind of just summarizing. And then they would have a job coach would go with them to the job to learn the job and then slowly fade out. Okay.
I think Mark, I think I want to just mention too, as a parent, the job, just like trying different jobs was very helpful in the sense of they may say, I think being a dishwasher is what I want to do. And then they go to be a dishwasher and they're like, but I don't see anybody, or I want to interact more. And so maybe they want to do something else. So, I mean, our son has had several jobs as he sorted through what he likes and what he doesn't like. So it's not like a once and done. Right.
Yep. How many of us have only had one job? When you think about it, we've all had at least 2 jobs or more. So, there have been, I've heard before, well, they had that one job. It didn't work out. Well, that's okay. That is totally okay. So you find a job that's a better job match, or a job that pays more money, or a job that, like Patty was saying, have different elements that you're interested in. So just because you've tried it one time, it doesn't mean you can't continue to try it until it works out. And then, even then, there's always another job. If they're interested in another job or want to make more money, or they move, or whatever the situation is. So it's never one and done. Never one and done. Okay, next slide, please. Discovery. This is my favorite. This is my very favorite part of this presentation, because discovery, I love this thing. Discovery consists of looking at the same thing as everyone else and thinking something different. And basically and that's Albert, I can't pronounce his last name, but he had something to do with learning about or discovering vitamin C. But I think when we talk about discovery, this is another tool that practitioners use to figure out what people's interests, abilities, and conditions for employment are, the pins, and really do a deep dive, not just on I want to be this or I want to be that, but really trying to take everything, lived experience into effect to really make it a good job match. So we're going to play some of this video we have for you. And this is a man by the name of Michael Callahan. He actually coined the phrase discovery. And he is with Mark Golden Associates. But he really does give some great insights into this service. And this is something that you can get, a service that you can get if you're with the county boards of developmental disabilities. This is not an OOD service. So just so you understand that. So we'll let this go for a little bit, and then he tells a few stories as well.
Okay. And this is where we want to start it, correct?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to start.
You're really looking for 3 things in discovery to give us direction for employment, to set that GPS. We're looking for things in people's lives that are indicative of success for them. We call those conditions for success. And if we look in people's lives and see them at their best and when their performance is most successful, we need to say, you know, if we could duplicate that in a workplace, then they would have a very good chance of being successful. We also need to think about interest, and that's part of resetting this GPS. Too often we just ask people surface questions. What do you want to do? And too often people give us surface answers. Oh, I would like to be a detective. I would like to be an actor. I would like to be an entertainer, you know, or a bank president or something like that. Well, good. I mean, people ought to aspire. You know, you stick a microphone in front of a 4-year-old's face and they'll say they want to be president or prime minister or something like that. You wonder why anyone would actually want to do that, but they will say that. But I think we need to get deeper. We need to get at intrinsic interest. Every one of us in this room has things that if it's our time, when this conference is over and it's next weekend and you get to make a decision, most of us are going to say, well, I'd like to, and then however you fill in the blank is likely to be an intrinsic interest. And in Discovery, we really seek to find people's intrinsic interest, not just their answer to the question, what job they want, but who they are as people, and then use that as a GPS toward the job market. And then finally, what kind of strengths, what kinds of contributions will people be bringing to potential employers? Oftentimes, the people we represent don't have the whole package. They don't have the whole competitive resume that we can go to an employer with and say, gosh, this person is just as good as any of your other applicants. Unfortunately, that's an aspect of the impact of disability in life. But the folks that we work with all have specific contributions. And Discovery will allow us to find those and take those forward. And one of the things to think about is people's lives are rich resources of this information, but in the form that they're living their lives, it's often confusing. I told the story last night at a presentation around a young woman whose 9-year-old brother suggested she was at her very best when she was opening Christmas presents, that she could actually open Christmas presents faster than anyone in her family. Well, that's an amusing aside, but people rarely get credit for how powerful that 9-year-old brother's perspective was. If we're willing to translate that to business terms, Jenny's already got a task to offer that no one had found about her in all of her tests, all of her comparisons, all of her evaluations and her academic scores in school and such as that. If we can look at people's lives and translate what they do to possibilities for work, you can't fail that, but you get strong direction. And we can do that for the conditions of employment, those things that I talked about. We look at what works in life and we can translate that to successful factors at work, whether it's the working environment or the working relationship, the hours, the days, all of that sort of stuff. We can also look at people's life interests. How many of us actually were asked at the point at which we were moving toward employment, you know, who are you and what would really make it worth getting out of bed in the morning for you to go to work? We weren't asked that. We were just told, well, you got to go to work. I'm sorry, you get your enjoyment on the weekend, but your work's just really going to be rut-like, you know. You're not likely to enjoy that. And indeed, too many of us are at work in jobs that are not intrinsically motivating at all. I would hope for you that you would go find such a job in your life. Not that we want you out of this field, but just a good part of life is to do a job that is intrinsically motivating for you. And then finally, as I was saying, we can translate those skills of life into the contributions that people can bring to employers. And then even people who experience the most significant impact of disability can be seen as competent because we know people do competent things in life if we look deeply enough. And all of this is about discovery. So let me tell you a couple of stories before I hand over to Dale. This is a wonderful story about a man who was working in a sheltered workshop. And he really, the staff wanted him to leave. And Larry was kind of a grumpy old guy. We do get grumpier as we get older, maybe. And he would just say no, you know. And the staff would go, come on, Larry, you're really good. And he finally agreed. He didn't pass tests very well, and he seemed to like the sheltered workshop. So it's like, why should we move forward with Larry, you know? But Larry's life could be significantly enhanced, I think, by having a job in the community. And during discovery, we learned a lot about Larry, a lot of his skills, but he still seemed to have a secret. Certainly no one at the workshop knew about it. And even the person doing discovery, one of the best facilitators of discovery I ever knew, she couldn't figure it out. And she did have good information about Larry's conditions for success, and she had great information about his potential contributions, but she was still lost about interest, that direction beacon toward the community. And finally, after several weeks of discovery, she talked to Larry and his mother. He was living with his mother, and said, Larry, I know there's a secret. There's got to be something. Please tell me. What's going on? And his mother looked at Larry and said, Larry, I think you ought to tell her. I think she's earned your trust. And Larry kind of had his head down and said, Larry, would you like me to tell her? And he nodded his head yes. Mom was being quite respectful of Larry's feelings. And he said, you know, what Larry doesn't want to tell you is that every day he comes home from the sheltered workshop, he sits out on the front stoop, his steps, and the postal delivery person, in this case the mailman, comes in. And Larry has a relationship with the mailman no one knows about. And in fact, every day when the mail is delivered, Larry sits out there and these guys talk. The mail delivery carrier puts his sack down and these guys sit and talk about things. He said, you know, first he taught Larry how the numbering system worked on the street. And he would let Larry sort the mail and then taught him how the numbers related one to the other. And then he started teaching him the names of the different people. Now, folks, if it's occurring to you, this is all highly illegal. Okay, this is not appropriate for the mail carrier, A, to stop work in the delivery route, but B, to start showing Larry, sorry about that. But he said, you know, Larry wants to handle the mail more than anything. And he's scared to death that if he tells someone, we'll tell him no. He'd rather hang on to the dream than have his dream dashed. And Melinda said, Larry, if you're saying that you would work if I can get you a job handling the mail, then I'll do that for you. That's the only places I will call. And he looked at her like, don't lie to me, lady. And Melinda carried through. Now, the U.S. Post Office is not the most accepting place in the world. But she ended up at a mailboxes, etc., where he's talking to a guy named Frank and was telling Larry's story, and looks up and Frank, this 6'6" guy, is crying. And Linda said, I'm sorry, sir, have I said something that's bothered you? And he said, well, yeah, but it's not your fault. He said, that's my story. And Melinda blurted out, you mean a mailman taught you how to read and identify numbers? He said, no, the SOBs at the post office wouldn't hire me. So I started a competition with them called Mailboxes, etc. And Melinda said, well, how would you like to meet Larry? So imagine the way that just the stories of discovery. Larry's still working there. He's a really old fart. And people have dreams. You know, Trang wants to be a disc jockey in a radio station. And I don't know really how to help a person with intellectual and developmental disabilities just step into a competitive thing like that. But we can make sure, in using the concepts of customized employment and supported employment, that we can actually find ways to get people having an aspect of their dream. And this isn't patronizing. This isn't saying, no, you can't be a disc jockey, so you just have to do tasks in a radio station. This is saying probably most disc jockeys start in a position just like that. I don't know if you would ever be one, but if you're going to be, you need to start paying your dues. And so Trang is working in a radio station. In Discovery, we found Matt laying on a couch, and his mother, in the most gentle and respectful way she can, says, I'm sorry, my son is a couch potato. He has been laying on that couch ever since he got out of school. I think he's very depressed. He can't find a job. Nobody wants to work with him. He's failed evaluations. And if you want a direction, you need to find what would get Matt off the couch. And it turns out he loves every kind of motorized piece of equipment. Now, this is a guy in Utah, so he shares a little bit of environmental stuff with you guys. You know what a snow machine is. You probably know what a four-wheeler or an ATV is. Anything like that, Matt loves. And his family actually has a snow machine and an ATV. But nobody ever thought that that could turn into employment. We said, Matt, is this what lights your fire? Is this what gets you off the couch? And it's like, absolutely yes. Matt's been working for a year and a half at the largest motorsport, recreational motorsport company in North Salt Lake. And the tasks that he does, we found during discovery that he had tasks on the computer that aren't necessarily competitive in his speed, but that were quality. And so by offering all of this, Matt's deep interest, and the fact that he had these tasks to an employer that had needs and benefit from what Matt offered, he's been working. We discovered Robert was very conflicted about work. All the men in his family were woodworkers, and yet people had been trying to get him to do dishwashing and janitorial tasks, and he would quit anything that the staff tried to get him to do. But by honoring his interests, by following, the tradition of his family, we were able to find a master cabinet worker who had just gotten his union card of being a master cabinet worker in Pittsburgh. And what he was doing was spending most of his time going back and forth to his tool cabinet. He was in a public area where he had to lock up his tools. And we identified, wouldn't it be nice to have someone kind of the equivalent of a surgery nurse handing a doctor a scalpel to hand a master carpenter the various tools and lock them up? Well, that lasted for about a month before the carpenter realized that Robert actually had some carpentry skills, and now both these guys could use a preparation or an assistant to hand them tools. When I met Ethan during discovery, I was a young man with Down syndrome. He's in his last year of high school. Voc Rehab said he couldn't work in his community. And I simply went into his bedroom. He asked me to go in. I looked at his mom. She said, sure, go in. And I loved the guy immediately. I'm from the Gulf Coast, so I'm a Saints fan. Sorry, Dale. And that's football, in case you don't know. And there was a Saints poster right above his bed. And then that's professional football. All around that was University of Utah in red. They're called the Utes. And he loves University of Utah. And again, during his school transition, he had been doing all kinds of things like washing dishes and just, there's nothing wrong with these tasks if that's what people want to do. But it wasn't motivating Ethan at all. Ethan now works at the athletic department at the University of Utah. The place that he would just dream to work. He works with the most beautiful young women you can imagine. And he doesn't take a bus to work. He does not, his mother doesn't take him to work. He doesn't walk to work or ride his bike. He floats to work. And I'll end with Anna. Anna was a woman that can kind of say to you, are you really too old to work? State of Illinois was confronted by our federal government for having people with developmental disabilities in nursing homes. And Anna had went into a nursing home when she was in her 20s. And now she's 78 and she's going to get out because we finally confronted those nursing homes. And we're thinking, oh, she would want to retire. And it's like, retire from what? I've been sitting in a nursing home for the last 50 years. I want to work, And in discovery, we found something simple. She walked around that nursing home with a camera around her neck, an old Kodak camera that took film pictures. And we saw her photo albums of all the pictures she took. And one of the things that happened to be noticed is that every picture was perfectly oriented. She could frame a picture so no one's head was cut off or, half your body was on the side of the picture. And then we began to look at the business community and found that at that time, law firms particularly were digitizing all of their paper stuff, and they were contracting this out, and they were getting crap for these contracts. In other words, they were getting these important documents that were half off the paper or sideways or twisted. And so Anna goes to work doing scanning, because she can, you see how you're translating? If you can center every picture, you can center the things here. Anna was 78. She worked until she was 82. She went home one day and died, a working woman. So what I'd like to leave you with, if you're kind of looking for a direction, which way to go, let's take Discovery, and I think you'll find some direction for that GPS. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Patty. I see some questions down in the chat, and I just had it up there. So one of the questions is, what's the difference? I'm sorry, the difference between discovery and career exploration. So discovery, career exploration is kind of a time limited, for example, maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, where you would actually just go out and try a job. And so that would be, no, I'm so sorry. Career exploration is when you're actually going out and just doing job shadowing, and you may do informational interviews. Some of what those things that happen in career exploration can also happen under discovery. But the real big difference between discovery is that, as Michael Callahan was saying, is that you really are doing a deep dive on people's intrinsic interest, and you're looking at the skills that they have, and you match those two things together, the skills and the interest, and you translate that into a marketable task, or a marketable set of tasks or skills that would be valuable to an employer. And so the idea is to really find out what motivates people, as he said, what gets people up and moving in the morning, what really would be very valuable to a person to want to do, and then find out what skills they have. And the key to discovery is that translation, being able to translate it into a marketable skill. He talked about the young lady whose 9-year-old brother had said that where she's at her very best is when she's opening up Christmas presents, and she could open up Christmas presents faster than anybody. Now, and he said what that perspective of that 9-year-old brother was that is a skill. That is a skill. Now you might ask, where would that occur? And I just I've heard this, I've seen this video so many times. It's one of my favorite because it just really gives a great description of discovery. But I actually remember a job that I had developed many years ago, where a clockmaker and a clock repair person, and this goes back many years, but what this employer wanted was somebody to take newspaper and to crumble it up and use it for packing material. Now this, again, I know that sounds really odd, but that was actually a job. And until like recently, I forgot about that one. And it was a job that went on probably for 6 months or 6 to 9 months, but it wasn't full time, of course, but it was a few hours a week where he wanted somebody just to, that's what he wanted for his packing material, was this newspaper wadded up, and that was the whole job. And so when you think about it, it's like there really is 1,000,001 ways to make money or to have a job. There's 1,000,001 things out there. And so you have to believe that your son or daughter have skills that are contributions that can be translated from their interest, their skills, into a task that would be valuable to an employer. So that's basically discovery. So the takeaway for discovery is, if you have a chance to be able to get discovery, please try that, and you would get that through your county board of DD. That OOD does not offer that, but that is something that if they're eligible for County Board of Developmental Disability Services, that is a service that they do. And so would highly encourage it, especially when you're looking at jobs that are just not labor market approach jobs where you go out, you fill out a resume, you look at a job description, and a person can fit neatly or almost neatly into a job description. When you have to go out and find something to where you're going to negotiate into a job, what we call customized employment, discovery is just an invaluable tool in that toolkit. So next slide. I'm not sure what we have on the next slide. So here are some customized jobs. I told you one about the wadding up paper at the clock shop. I'll tell you one more story about a customized job. And these are the ones that I've done over the years. And I know that there's more, but these are the only ones I could remember for right now. But one was at Kroger's, and it was a young man who had a traumatic brain injury. He had fallen off the back of a pickup truck and had a traumatic brain injury, and he just graduated high school. It was very horrible, very tragic. But he, once he had kind of recovered, he'd gone through rehab, he wanted to work. And so he was very interested in working for Kroger's. But Kroger's, because of some of the impact of the physical part of the physical disability and some of the memory, we were trying to figure out, well, what would be something. He wanted to work at Kroger's. He loved the people there. And so we went in and we talked to the manager, and he says, I could use somebody who could fill up our popcorn, run our popcorn in our deli. And this is back when they popcorn in the deli. And so we were able to carve out a job to where his job was to pop the corn and to bag it, put a label on it, and then to make sure that it was on display. And he was able to do this using one hand. And so we were able to form a jig to where he could basically it was a crochet hoop that was attached to the popcorn maker with a funnel, and he would with one hand he would put the popcorn in, he would spin the bag, he would run it through a taper, and then with one hand he was able to put a label on it. So that became his job, and he was, Kroger's was very interested in the olfactory effect that the popcorn had in the deli. So, when you smell the popcorn, you get really hungry, you want to buy stuff. And so not only did they buy his popcorn, but they sold a lot of other things in the deli department because it attracted people in. And so he worked that job. I'm not even sure, probably 5-7 years at least. But that's an example of trying to figure out what a person's interested in, what they're able to do, and translate that into something an employer wants. So a customized job. I'm not going to go through all of these. There are so many different things that, we're looking at when you're talking about customized employment, but discovery is the basis of getting those customized types of employment opportunities. Next slide. I think we're towards the end here. Okay. I just wanted to address this really quick. Throw this in there. I know this will be a whole nother SALT series, but many of the fears associated with people getting into community employment are the fears of losing benefits. So many years way back when, that really was a big issue because Social Security didn't have a lot of of work incentives there. But nowadays, that fear of loss of cash benefits, loss of Medicaid or Medicare, overpayments, et cetera, those things are now, they've really done a 360 on being able to address those types of fears. We'll go on to the next slide and just some of the ways they've done that. So just some tips to consider about about Social Security. So there's actually a website out there called DB101. It's an online tool. You can enter in information about how much, SSI a person might have and how much earnings you think you might get. And then it will work out, what that would look like. It's just kind of it's a nice online tool. I would always suggest that you seek out a work incentives planning person, and that is something that OOD can help you with, and that's something that also the county boards of DDs can help you with as well. And these are people who are certified to do this. They do a really great job with taking everything into account and making sure you understand the impact of wages on benefits. And I just wanted to make sure I threw that in there, because that seems to be one of the number one fears that families have, when they're looking at employment, the fear of losing benefits. And there's so many tools out there now that address this concern. So please seek out those opportunities to work with those work incentive practitioners, because they do an awesome job. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Do we have any other questions down there in the chat that we haven't? Who provides discovery services? I'm gonna throw that over to Michelle. That's okay.
Sure. So right now in Montgomery County, Capabilities, Goodwill, I think URS, and we also use Carol Buckner from Buckner's Best to do discovery.
Okay. Any other questions? I think we've answered the ones in the chat.
I know regarding your mentioning that benefit analysis that they would do for the fear of losing your benefits. We've had one. Every time certain points we would have it done. I think we've had one done 3 different times. I think legal aid did us once. The county board did ours another time, and I'm thinking OOD might have done one of ours one time. So you don't have to do it. It's not like once and done. Every time your child wants to change a job or life changes, you can get one done.
I think just in parting, I want parents to understand that there are so many resources out there to support your son or daughter for community employment. You will not be in it alone. This is really, there's just so much. It doesn't, even if they're just trying different things, do a job trial, go out and talk to employers. But just know that there are so many services and supports out there in school and when they graduate that can help your son or daughter with getting a job in the community. It's definitely so doable. You just really have to. You really just have to think about who's on your team. What are the services and supports out there? And so the ones that we listed are just a few of them. There's even more, but those are kind of the main ones. And I always want to advocate for discovery. If you have the opportunity for discovery, that's always a very good one to figure out for specialized situations, especially. So that's all.
Anybody have any more questions for Mark or Michelle? Anything related to, like, if you have any specific questions about a county board's process, or Michelle she was with Montgomery County Board of Development and Disabilities, but a lot of the county boards follow several basic the same basic guidelines. Many of them are able to offer these same services, but is there anything specific? If you haven't been through a county board, checked out a county board of developmental disabilities for eligibility, you're not sure who to reach out to, I think you can probably reach out to any, Mark, Michelle, or I can look it up, but you would look up, your county board of developmental disabilities. Usually there's a main phone number, and then just see if you can become eligible and then go from there. Michelle, do you have anything to add for if someone is seeking county board, or Mark, for seeking that first step? Maybe they didn't do that eligibility part for the county board, and this is very new to them.
I had one thing I wanted to add that we did not talk about. Michelle, I'll kind of throw it over to you, but
Sure.
there's also transportation available to help people get to and from jobs. And you want to say something to that? And
yes, we can help find, the Employment Navigator can help find non-medical transportation. We also help with RTA and Project Mobility, which is the paratransit service in Montgomery County. So just depending on the child, how we feel, if they should take public transportation or if we need non-medical transportation, we can help with that once they find employment and once they are out of school.
And that could mean they can go direct, and they could come pick them up at their home,
Yes.
take them to work, pick them up from work, and take them back home.
Correct.
Yep. So I'm sorry we didn't get that in. That's kind of a biggie. So glad we got that at the end. Thanks. Thanks, Michelle.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to stop the recording for a minute in case anybody wants to open up. Maybe, there are some questions and they don't want to type in the chat. We always allow a few minutes for like open conversation. So I appreciate, thank you, Mark and Michelle, before I close the recording, just thank you for your presentation regarding this employment planning. It was very clear and very good. A copy of this will be out there. We'll have it available for those who want to review it again or see any of those videos again. So I'm going to go ahead and close the recording 1 second, and then we'll open it up for discussion.